Hey guys, welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, we're going to be doing yet another custom D&D sculpt. Now, I started this sculpt off like I do with the majority of my sculptures. Started off in Forger, which is a sculpting app for the iPad Pro, and I just like to start off in Forger because it's easy to be able to carry around my iPad wherever I want, so I can just sit down wherever. And I like to use Forger just to kind of sketch out ideas real quick, and then a lot of those ideas I end up liking, so I end up turning them into full sculptures. But that's kind of the reason I like Forger, just because it's easy to use and I have it on my iPad, so I can take it anywhere, and it's just fast and it's really quick. And this guy is pretty similar to a lot of the sculpts I do. For those of you who watch my channel a lot, you know that I sculpt a lot of buff dudes, and this guy was no different. Just basically wanted to rough out a really muscular body, and then you'll see later on I end up adding some things. And this character is a god in the D&D campaign I'm running. Same with the last few characters I've been doing in this D&D series, and his name's Ermanthian. And for any of you who might be familiar with Greek mythology, all the gods of this world are named after the different 12 labors of Hercules. So the fourth, I believe it was, the fourth labor of Hercules was to fight the Ermanthian boar. So I base them, obviously the name's based off that, but also I base a lot of the character off each of those labors. So you'll see later on I end up adding a boar head on top of this character. Just like, again, for those of you who've seen my past videos, the first god that I sculpted in this series was Nemean, after the Nemean lion that Hercules fought and killed. So that character had a lion head on top of it, or like a helmet, I guess, but it was a real lion, was what I was going for, at least. But then, like, the past two ones I did was the Hydra and then the deer. So like my past one had deer antlers. I just kind of did that to homage to the original 12 labors of Hercules, but also once I did it with the first guy, then I kind of want all these gods to definitely have a different sense. Like, I want them to look different, but have some sort of cohesiveness between all of them. And here you can see now what I was talking about, where I'm adding in a boar. And the idea with some of them, like this guy and the first dude I did, again, Nemean, the guy with the lion on his head, is they killed these massive beasts, and now they're wearing them, kind of like in a lot of depictions of Hercules. After he kills the Nemean lion, he wears it on his head, like in the Hercules movie with The Rock. He does that, and I just really like that idea, so I was trying to bring that over. But with some of them, like the Hydra, there's a lot of different depictions of a Hydra, and I didn't necessarily want a Hydra or big old snake head on there, so I decided to go with a helmet for that one. And same with my last one, which was the deer. So I just did another helmet with antlers, and I'll probably do that in the future, depending on what animal it's based off of or what. And not all the 12 labors are based off of actually killing animals, so things will change as they go. But one thing that's gonna stay consistent throughout all the characters, again, like I mentioned earlier, is the fact that they all will have some sort of helmet or animal on their head or something like that. And this guy is based off of a drawing I did years ago. All these gods that I'm sculpting for my campaign, I designed years ago. And at the end, when I show the final photos, I'll pop up some of the old artwork I did. So I'm basing it off that roughly, but really just kind of making things up as I go along. And I wanted this guy to, my original artwork, he was shirtless and just this big buff dude, so I wanted to carry that over. But I also wanted him to look like he was a kind of a rough, wild frontiersman. So you'll see I give him some pants and a leather jerkin and different things like that. And now you can see we're obviously in ZBrush, and ZBrush is like the professional version of Forger, basically. You're talking about video games or movies or anything like that. If there's anybody needing a sculpting program in a professional manner, they're going to be using ZBrush. And there's a lot of different things you can do in ZBrush. Even though I've been learning it for a long time, um, I've been learning it for almost a year now. There's still tons of things I don't know about it, and a lot of that is just kind of on me, because I don't always have the time to learn new things. I'm trying to get out a new video every week, so I don't necessarily have the time to just focus on a new skill every week at the same time. But a lot of it is also, there's just so much you can do, and then you could add in plugins and all this stuff. So ZBrush is always expanding, and they're constantly updating it too, so there's just so much you can do in ZBrush. And that's one thing I'm trying to do going forward. I really want to try and focus and make my sculpts better. I think like pretty much all of them, this guy included, they look decent, and they're way better than anything I would have done a year ago. Like looking back and seeing some of my old sculpts, I've definitely gotten better, but I really want to push my skills even farther, and just looking at actual professional sculptors. There's a lot I can learn, a lot more I could do. So one thing I'm considering is, because like for these characters, the D&D gods, they're all in a static pose, and I did that because the initial concept drawings I did of them, they were just in a static pose, and also in world they're supposed to be these little statues, so I didn't want them to be these little crazy dynamic positions, because they're going to be these little statues that the characters get or earn throughout the campaign. So I wanted them to be pretty basic, and also I do actually print them out and give them to my D&D players in real life. But that's just basically a long-winded way of saying that these D&D figures I'm doing are all pretty basic pose-wise. They're all just kind of standing there, and that's something that I want to continue that throughout the future of them. And there's going to be 12 of these gods, and I want to do that for all of them. And because I want them to be all cohesive, like I was mentioning. But one thing, like I mentioned, I really want to work on is doing more detail, adding more little intricacies into each of my sculpts. But also, one thing that I think I've been lacking on the most is posing. And I've had some sculpts in the past, if I have a really good dynamic pose and I'm really liking the way that's going, then I'll work harder on the sculpture and try to make it look better, just because I'm excited about it and more passionate about it. If any of you seen my past videos, my very first one I ever did was a sculpture of Thor and a character from the comics named Gore the God Butcher, and that was probably the most I've ever spent on a single project, sculpting wise. I spent so long on it, and I was super happy with it, the way it turned out. And looking back on it now, it's not that great, because again, it was the first thing I did on this channel, so I've definitely gotten better, my skills have gotten better, but I spent so much time on it, and it's way more detailed, at least for the time. Now I can do a lot more detail in a sculpture nowadays, just because I know what I'm doing and I'm faster at it. But like, as far as actual time spent and passion into it, I spent a lot more time on that sculpture. So one thing I was considering doing is just taking old comic book covers or movie covers or anything like that I thought would be cool, and recreating them, because that's what that Thor one was. It was a comic book cover that I just loved, and I recreated it in this 3D sculpting program. So that's one thing I'm thinking about doing in the future, just because then I already have the pose, the position, and I know how much detail and all these things I need to add, and then I'm just trying to replicate it. And I feel like that would help me get better at sculpting, because with something like this, again, I'm happy with the way this guy turned out, but he basically, I could just get a freestyle and do what I want, really, because he's my own character. There's nothing I have to hold up to. I can't be like, oh, I need to add in this weapon or these shoulder straps or anything like that, because I made him up. So if he doesn't have that, he doesn't have that. If I don't want to add it, I don't add it. But if I'm doing something like, again, that Thor statue, I'm kind of forced to finish it to the as complete as I can, So that's something I'm thinking about doing. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you guys have any good ideas for like awesome comic book covers you guys love, or movie covers, or something like that you just think would look really good in a 3D form. And that's not to say I'm not going to continue doing what I'm doing. I've still got, again, this is the 4th character out of this D&D series I'm doing, and like I mentioned earlier, there's 12 of them, so I got a lot more of these D&D figures that will be coming out. I'm still doing the Avatar drawings on my iPad on Procreate, and I'm loving those, so I'll continue to do those. And obviously, of course, the Minecraft figures. Still got a bunch of those in the work. I'm still going to continue on to those, but these would be more long form pieces that I'd be able to spend a lot more time on and work on, kind of in the background whenever I have time. So yeah, if you guys are interested, check out my original Thor video. It's really rough video. Like I mentioned, it's the first one I ever did, so the audio is terrible and the sculpt isn't as good as it could be. But basically, something in that vein where I took an old comic book cover that I just absolutely loved and recreated it. If you guys have any good ideas for something like that, then yeah, let me know in the comments. To get back to this sculpt, I am super happy with the way this turned out. I just wanted to mention that because I do want to spend more time on sculpts and be able to push them farther, but I put out a video every week, which is a goal I kind of set myself, and I've been considering lately doing a video every 2 weeks or something like that, just so I have more time for the sculpture. But as of right now, I do a video every week, so whether it's this or, like I said, a Minecraft character or Avatar or whatever, I gotta get something out. So I don't usually have as much time for each sculpt as I would want to. And when it came to this character, I was happy with pretty much everything, really. Even like I would mention the one of the biggest struggles I had was his hair, trying to make that look good, and then just his design in general. I pretty much added that little leather skirt thing and then those pants, and that was really it. I wanted him to look like he was a rough and tumble guy, kind of someone you'd find out in the forest, like on the Revenant, or one of those shows where they got those frontiersmen. That's kind of the idea I was going with. But aside for his boar head, he seems kind of bland to me. Doesn't have a lot going on. And again, that's just kind of what I have to do because I have to get these videos out every week. So I kind of ran out of time with these characters. So I don't want to bite off more than I can chew and then not have time to finish them. I'd rather just have less going on and finish them to a higher standard than having a half-finished character, but he has more going on, if that makes sense. But that's just another reason I wanted to bring up for why I was considering doing the cover recreations. Or it doesn't even have to be like the recreation of a comic book cover or anything like that, but if you have like even like a screenshot from a movie that you think would be good recreated in 3D, just something like that, just something where I'm not just pulling out of my own brain and I'm like actually copying something, using something as reference. I think it just makes the end product so much better, and I think I would learn a lot more. For those of you who watch my Avatar painting videos that I do in Procreate, I use a lot of reference photos for those, and that's something that I never did in the past, doing drawings, sketching, and painting, anything like that. I never really used reference photos for my own original work, and I'm never going back. I love doing it. I think it makes my work look so much better. I had an issue when I was younger where I thought if I referenced something I was cheating, but as I get older I realize that's stupid. You learn about all these old artists back in the day that's what they did. That's how you get better. You gotta look at real life to see. If I just tried drawing a human and never looked at a human to know it would obviously look terrible. And the more I do it in the future, I might have to use less and less reference, especially if it's something that I draw a lot. Then I'm not gonna have to use reference to make sure it looks good. But like here with these sculptures, I don't really use reference unless it's something that I don't know. Like you guys saw in the video, I referenced the boar head because I've never drawn a boar, never sculpted, never nothing, so I don't know what a boar looked like, so I used some reference for that. But when it came to this character, his clothing, all that, I've done enough to kind of get by and make it look good enough. So I don't use reference for most of my stuff when it comes to humans. But I think that's a problem. Like these look fine, but I think they could look so much better if I did use reference and looked up some references for actual leather straps and pants and things like that. I can make my sculptures look even better. So that's something I'm trying to do in the future. So again, if you guys think of anything cool that I could recreate in ZBrush, then let me know in the comments. So to get back to the sculpt at hand, right now I'm just adding in a little bit of a fur on the top of his leather skirt thing, and I kind of like to take into account what's actually going to be going on with these characters. So he is a god, and at least in my D&D campaign, gods don't need clothes to stay warm, which is evident by the fact that he's not wearing a shirt, but I still am going for a certain aesthetic. That's why I went ahead and added the fur and the leather and the pants and all that, because I want him to look like this really gruff huntsman that lives out in the woods, and you know, his clothing doesn't really look like what you'd see typically in the rest of this D&D campaign and the rest of the world. I want him to look like a much more of a rough character, or more wild. But one thing I struggled with at the same time was trying to make him still look good, because he's a god, and the gods in my campaign are benevolent. You know, they're not evil. So I had to kind of toe the line between wild and making him look a little too creepy. For a while, you could see he's only got one eye, and that was because I was originally just gonna have him have one eye and make one of them had been gouged out or have a scar across it or something. But eventually I do go in and add another eye, because he was looking a little too creepy for me, and again, I wanted him to look like he was a wild man, but not so much that he was evil. And when it comes to sculpting the hands and arms, I was starting to, like I mentioned a lot, I was starting to run out of time with this sculpt, didn't have as much time as I wanted, so kind of had to rush this part, so I just did a few quick passes. And it's not a big deal. Again, I just want to mention that these are all for my D&D campaign, and as my players go along and learn new things, they earn these little statues or totems more, and I actually print these guys out and give them to the players as they go along. And in the actual world of the campaign, they are awarded these totems, and they grant them magical powers or whatever. But I thought it'd just be so much fun if I could have them in real life, so I do actually print these guys out, and they're just small, maybe 4 or 5 inches tall. So little details like his fingernails and the wrinkling around, how his skin moves, and things like that aren't super important because they're so small you don't really see all that detail. It's something that if, you know, I put all my stuff on Etsy. Anything you see me sculpt on here I put on Etsy, so if I had someone buy this off Etsy, I'd probably go in and add in all that detail, just so it's at a higher caliber, because someone's actually spending money on it. But for what it is, where I just print this off for my D&D players, and it's a really small print, versus if I sell them on Etsy, they're a lot bigger, that detail's not super important, at least at this stage. And even going in here, I'm adding in a texture over the skin, and that's more for just the like YouTube thumbnails and like seeing the photos, the final photos at the end of the videos, because printing it as small as I do, this detail is not going to show up, and if I make it really deep detail so it shows up, it's going to look really weird. So, you know, again, if it's something that I have anytime I have a product to actually sell on Etsy, I'll usually go in and go over the final model one more time, just to see if I need to add any little details or anything like that to make sure it looks really good. But at this stage, for how big I actually print these characters and stuff, this is really just for photos and to actually put on Etsy, just to make it look better, because just having the skin be flat doesn't look as good as adding in this a little bit of texture, a little bit of noise, just to break up the smoothness a bit. His feet were actually something that I struggled with a little bit. I was rushing to get him done in this last little bit of time I had, and I just wanted him to look like fur boots that he kind of threw together, and they didn't end up as good as I wanted. They were kind of a struggle. But then the last thing I'm doing is just going in and adding in some war paint, which is something I really like doing. I think it brings the whole sculpted together, especially once you start talking about colors. And same with my video from last week. The girl I did had a bunch of tattoos, and all those tattoos have different connotations for what they mean in game. But as far as like an artistic standpoint, I just think they look good. Now here's my original drawing from years and years ago, and it's pretty similar. You notice that I ended up taking off his little shoulder pauldron because I think it made him look a little bit too refined. I think I like what I ended up with. It makes him look a lot more rough and wild, which was what I was going for originally. And one thing I realized is adding in all these this war paint makes him look really spooky and more like an evil character. So, not sure how I like that, but I think it looks cool, so I'm fine with it. Yeah, just want to thank anybody that watched the whole video, made it all the way to the end here. Super appreciate anybody willing to like my videos, comment, subscribe, anything like that helps me out a lot. And also want to mention that anything you see on here, you can check out on my Etsy account. Anything I sculpt at all, you can see on there. And if you want to buy any art prints, like those avatar videos I've been doing, then you can check out the link down below. I just opened up an art shop. And again, just want to mention, if you guys have any good ideas for any comic book covers, movie covers, video game covers, anything you think I should recreate to help me test my skills and get better, then definitely hit me up down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to try anything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.